Hello and welcome to Harvest Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Naomi Marsh, certified holistic behavioral coach, life coach, holistic educator, energy worker, and I wear many other hats. But today, I'm honored to be your host and to share some insightful and hopefully helpful tips that will help you set boundaries and maintain healthy boundaries in your life. I'm so grateful that you are here today listening in. I shared a couple weeks ago, Healthy Boundaries Part 1, and in today's episode is Part 2. I'm sharing and really diving much deeper into more specific healthy boundaries, how to set them, how to keep them, and to nurture healthy relationships in your life. So first, I want to take a minute to just be and just breathe. I know it sounds simple, but you'd be surprised at how many people forget to actually breathe deep. Shallow breathing is very common. And so I just want you to take a nice, deep, cleansing breath in. Inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth, just nice and slow, just a nice, cleansing, deep breath. Release your shoulders, release any tension in your jaw, let go of any distractions. Just take a deep breath and bring your attention inward. Reflect on why you're here. Reflect on your relationships that you have, the relationships that you'd like to build. What brought you here in this moment? Maybe you can ask yourself, what is my heart's desire to achieve or experience through setting healthy boundaries? And be patient. Allow yourself to really reflect. Why are you here? When it comes to healthy relationships, we have to think of healthy boundaries as the foundation of our house, Everything you build on that foundation, like trust, respect, reciprocity, they all need a solid base to thrive. And that's often where many relationships kind of hit a snag because the foundation simply wasn't strong enough from the beginning. So how do we lay that solid groundwork to bring stability and balance and harmony into our relationships? How do we communicate effectively to set or maybe strengthen our boundaries with loved ones or coworkers or friends? Well, awareness is the first step. Because, awareness is really about getting in tune with your own thoughts, emotions, and actions. It's like taking a moment, to really notice what's going on inside your head and around you, and, without jumping to conclusions or judging. And when you start to pay attention, you can spot those patterns and the triggers, that affect what you do and the choices that you make. It's like laying the groundwork for growing and making changes in your life. So that's the foundation we cover, right? This is part of those layers. So awareness is one of those layers. And once you've got that awareness down, you can figure out what you need and where you need to draw the line. That way, you're making choices that sync up with what you truly value and what you truly deeply desire. Plus, when you're more aware, you can tell when someone is stepping over the line, and you'll be ready to stand up for yourself. It also gives you a better understanding of how your actions might affect others, which can lead to stronger, more empathetic relationships. Then we move into, mindfulness, from awareness and into mindfulness. And mindfulness is really about staying in the moment, right? Being fully engaged and, with everything that's happening around you in that moment. It's like tuning into your thoughts, your feelings, and your body sensations, those physical sensations, all with an open mind, without letting them overwhelm or control you. when you practice mindfulness, you're creating a deeper connection with yourself and your experiences. It's a great tool for managing stress and handling your emotions, especially when you need to set or, reinforce boundaries. So it's going to help you to stay calmer and, more clear-headed, making it easy for you to express your needs and to stay focused on your personal growth and what's important to you. So it also, you boost your empathy and understanding. Being mindful really can improve your interactions with others and help you to handle tricky social situations, that may have caused you problems in the past. Then you take awareness and mindfulness and you smush them together like a cake, and they work like a dream team together. It's like you're going to make more conscious and fulfilling decisions, that affect your life while building the foundation for your life. And mindfulness and awareness are a big part of that. Those layers are extremely important. So, you're here for a reason. You clicked on this podcast and you're listening in because healthy boundaries is important to you and you want to learn more about it. So your path has led you to this moment. It's time to give yourself permission to embrace what you truly desire and what you truly deserve in your life. Allow yourself to really dig into this process. It's time to honor who you are. It's time to honor your authentic self and build relationships that are healthy and that bring value and reciprocity to the table. Imagine the life that you want to live, filled with all the good stuff, healthy relationships, meaningful work, a strong sense of self-worth. Each step you take, no matter how big or small, toward defining and maintaining your boundaries, it brings you closer to that vision, to that goal. So keep that vision that in your heart and start taking actionable steps, because you are the architect of your own life. And you are capable of designing an environment that protects you, that supports you, and that respects you. Okay, so let's talk about setting your intention, because that's really, really important, I think, in anything that we do. Setting an intention is very powerful. It's a great way for us to focus our energy and our mindset as we begin anything new, especially when we're exploring and establishing our healthy boundaries, and we want to set an intention. So think of an intention like planting a seed. You have to care for it. Obviously, it's very important. It's very delicate because you're planting that seed. So it's going to take a lot of nurturing. So let's take a moment to plant your intention for this journey. I want you to think about what you hope to gain from this. And an example would be something like, if I was to set my intention, today I set my intention to learn about and understand the significance of healthy boundaries in my relationships. I am open to discovering new strategies and insights that will empower me to communicate my needs effectively and assertively. My goal is to nurture stronger, more respectful connections with those around me while honoring my own needs and values. I commit to approaching this journey with an open mind and an open heart, embracing both the challenge and the opportunity for growth that it presents. I prioritize this learning for myself. I desire to create a harmonious balance in my interaction with others. Those are very thought out phrases as statements of intention. I thought this out before recording this podcast. What would my intention be? What is my intention? And that's what I wrote down. I encourage you to write down your own. But if you want to use these as examples, fire away, go for it. Get your journal out. Find a little cozy nook and start journaling. Here's one of the things here's a couple of questions I'd like you to write down. What do I hope to achieve by exploring and setting healthy boundaries? How do I want to feel as I work on my boundaries? And what personal values do I want to honor through my boundaries? And it's important to remember that, healthy self-talk, when we're creating these boundaries and we're journaling out, and even if we're just talking with ourselves, we're with ourselves 24/7, and our inner dialogue shapes how we perceive ourselves and the world around us. So I'm sure you've heard of affirmations, and maybe even you use them already. I hope so. They're powerful tools that really kind of shape our inner dialogue, and they influence our perception of our own self-worth. So the words that we choose to speak to ourselves can either uplift us or undermine our confidence and our mental health. And since we are with ourselves, like I said, 24/7, every moment of the day, creating an empowering and nurturing inner dialogue is super important. The words that we use are extremely powerful. They have the ability to, inspire, to heal, and to really change things for the better. But if we keep talking negatively to ourselves, we end up reinforcing all of the bad stuff, all the self-doubts, all the insecurities, and all those, negative belief systems. But on the flip side, using positive affirmations and healthy self-talk, we can totally change the game. It helps us build a mindset that is all about resilience and self-acceptance and self-love. And these affirmations act like little nudges for us, reminding us, of our strengths and our values, so we can tackle whatever comes our way with confidence. Because our words have power. We've all heard about the power of the spoken word, right? And when we speak affirmations aloud, we amplify their impact. So vocalizing our beliefs really kind of, reinforces our intention, and it helps solidify our commitment to our own personal growth. And so the act of hearing our affirmations can create that powerful, feedback loop, so to speak, in reinforcing healthy, positive thoughts and emotions inside of us. And the spoken word carries a frequency. It resonates deep within us, shaping our reality and influencing the energy that we emit and also the energy that we absorb. Each word that we speak vibrates with intention, setting it's like I always say, these ripples throughout, the universe, really, that can uplift and inspire and transform us. And so as we speak with mindfulness and with purpose, our words become a powerful force, creating this, harmonic resonance that really aligns with our deepest desires and truths, our authentic self. And there's also power in the written word. This is why journaling is so important. Even if you're just listing things out. Writing affirmations can really help you internalize and boost that, healthy, positive self-talk. So when you jot things down, you can get a chance to, go back and reflect and look inside of yourself, what your thoughts are in that moment. And it makes it easier to pinpoint your goals and your dreams, and also to reflect back on how far you've grown. And plus, by putting your affirmations on paper, you're creating something tangible that you can look back on and reinforce and go back to and adjust anytime you need. And also a great reminder for yourself. So now here's the sweet spot. It's synergy. When you combine both practices together, the written word and the spoken word, something magical happens. So start by jotting down your affirmations in your journal or on a piece of paper or a sticky note, whatever it is, and put them somewhere that you can easily see every day. And I want you to read them out loud every day, even if you have to set yourself an alarm. Lots of people find it helpful to keep their journal by their bed, or maybe stick their written affirmations on sticky notes on the mirror or somewhere where you see every day. And by combining both the written and spoken word, you really strengthen your bond with yourself, these affirmations, because they're helping you to reinforce your truths and dreams in your mind, your body, your emotions, and your spirit. And there are tons of affirmations out there to get ideas from, but making your own can be super meaningful and very powerful, since they're written in your unique language and reflect your truths and who you are. So here's some things to think about if you're going to create your own affirmations. First, identify your needs. Reflect on areas of your life where you seek improvement or support. And ask yourself, what do you need to hear to feel empowered and motivated? Then use healthy, positive language. Frame your affirmations in a positive light, focusing on, what you want to achieve rather than what you want to avoid. And that's very important. So keep it in a positive light. And then be specific and present. Use specific language that really resonates with you and your current goals, and phrase them in the present tense to reinforce their power, basically, and it's immediate. And then lastly is keep it personal. Make sure that your affirmations are meaningful and relevant to you and your unique experiences. That's super important. So identify your needs, use healthy, positive language, be specific and present, and keep it personal. Top 4 pieces of advice there when crafting your own affirmations. Here's a couple of general affirmations that kind of help with self-talk and positive self-talk. Like, I am deserving of respect and kindness, or I embrace my unique strengths and talents. Those are a little bit more general. Now, if you want to get more specific, like when we're talking about affirmations for healthy boundaries, it would be something like, I am worthy of setting healthy boundaries. I respect my own needs and desires. And this one, which I love, it's okay to say no. That's a good one. So let's take a little deeper dive into understanding healthy boundaries as a whole. We all have our personal space and things that really matter to us, and priorities within us, with our mind, body, emotions, and spirit, that are super important. So boundaries are those invisible lines that keep us safe. And they basically tell others also what's cool and what's definitely not cool. So you got to think of boundaries as the rules of how you want others to treat you as well, and how you treat yourself. So they're very important for making sure that you feel safe and respected, whether it's with friends, family, or even just in your own self. It's important to set those personal boundaries within yourself. And so you might be saying, well, why are healthy boundaries such a big deal? I mean, it's, the talk of the town. But, when you set healthy boundaries, it it does a bunch of good things. I mean, it keeps your emotions in check, your physical and well-being. It helps you to hold on to and also build self-respect and self-worth. And it lets you focus on what you really desire and need and want in your life. And it makes your relationships with others more balanced and healthy. So every time you set a healthy boundary, you take a step toward becoming healthier from the inside out. And this internal change raises your vibration, and it creates this beautiful ripple effect that I'm always talking about that positively influences your life and then extends to the lives of those around you. And so when you're confident and clear about your boundaries, others around you feel more respected and inspired to do the same thing. So go out there and be a boundary inspiration. And here's the thing, is that when you first start setting boundaries, some people might be surprised, but over time, they'll begin to respect them, and it'll lead to healthier interactions where everybody feels more comfortable. And this is what will ultimately strengthen your relationship. Think back to past a gathering that you had, like a family gathering. Maybe you realized that you needed to set some boundaries around someone giving, unwelcome advice. By addressing this, you can keep conversations supportive and positive, rather than overwhelming and critical. So you're taking control of what you can control, which is your boundaries and your response. The last thing we want is a reaction, So, when you communicate your boundaries, it's all about practicing assertive but respectful language. You want to be clear, but you also want to be respectful and kind. You don't have to be a jerk about it. You can prepare responses ahead of time, like, I appreciate your concern, but I'm handling it in my own way. Boom, problem solved. You made your needs clear and you were kind about it. I appreciate your concern, but I'm handling it in my own way. Very simple. And sometimes, keeping those boundaries intact can be tough, especially with people who are persistent. You might need to repeat your boundaries a few times or gently change the subject, which takes patience and determination, But setting boundaries can really bring kind of this mix of emotions, and from anxiety about, possible conflict to the flip side, which is relief once your boundary is finally respected. It's like victory, And with time, you'll feel more confident and empowered, and you'll gain a greater sense of control over your interactions. It does take practice, just like anything you want to get good at. It takes practice. And once you see how important boundaries are for you, you become more aware of others' boundaries. And so you can, have this mutual respect and creating this environment where everyone feels valued and heard. And this is like, there's a significant importance in respecting other people's boundaries. That's one of our responsibilities. Maintaining them, it involves recognizing and honoring the boundaries of others. Just as we need our boundaries respected, we also need to give that respect in return. So it's really important to listen closely and respect what others need and where their boundaries are. And just be open to learning more about each other through healthy conversations. It's pretty simple, really. When you respect someone's boundaries, you're showing them that you care about them. And that really helps build stronger, healthier, happier relationships. Because you need healthy communication. Talking with others in a way that works well is really important for keeping relationships strong, whether it's with friends or family or at work. Getting the hang of good communication can really help you kind of dodge conflicts and, build stronger bonds and really reach the goals of healthy relationships, which is what this is all about, And a big part of this is active listening. This means really tuning in to someone, when someone's talking to you and making sure that, you get where they're coming from. And instead of butting in or jumping to conclusions, try to really hear them out. And ask questions if you're not sure what they mean. Clear it up. This is something I feel most people need practice with, is active listening. I think a lot of people are just waiting for their turn to say what it is that's on their mind, and they're not really actively listening to what the other person is saying. So by doing that, it's, when it comes to healthy setting boundaries and keeping them, when we genuinely listen, we get a better grasp of what others need, and then we're able to also explain our own boundaries more clearly. So there is a give and receive in that way. So in any relationship, listening closely helps us, it helps us to not only spot where boundaries might need a bit of setting up or maybe adjusting, but also by being attentive, we can see when our boundaries are being pushed or when someone else maybe seems uneasy, which lets us, kind of communicate with them in a timely and a respectful way about, hey, what are you uneasy about? And maybe help them to, identify what's going on there as well. So it's important to be able to express yourself. And healthy communication means being able to do that in a clear and respectful way. So you want to avoid using any sort of blaming or attacking language, when you're communicating. So what you want to do is you want to use I statements, to express how you feel. Here's an example. Instead of saying something like, you never listen to me, try saying something like, I feel unheard when we don't take the time to talk things through. See, it's like you're explaining where you're coming from and you're taking responsibility instead of accusing or blaming or attacking, and that could come off in a certain way. So I feel unheard when we don't take time to talk things through. So this makes a huge difference in any sort of communication, not just with boundaries, but any communication. It makes a huge difference. And I'm sure you've heard the saying, it's not what you say, it's the way you say it. That is 100% what I'm saying here. And healthy communication is a two-way street. This also means being open to feedback and willing to work together in order to find a solution that works for everyone involved. And by practicing, communication, active listening, and expressing yourself in a respectful way and being open to feedback, and, you can improve your communication skills and build stronger, healthier relationships from both sides. So let's talk about what happens if things, escalate. Because that does happen, especially when you're working with somebody who's a little bit, disrespectful or kind of stuck in their ways. And this one can be a difficult one. When someone doesn't respect your boundaries, it can cause this immediate reaction, which is what we want to avoid. We don't want to react to be triggered. What we want is a calm, firm, confident response. And if the person continues to disrespect you or becomes aggressive in any way, it's okay to disengage completely from the conversation. You can say something like, I don't feel comfortable continuing this conversation if we can't remain respectful to each other. That's perfectly fine. You're setting the rules. And the goal, remember, is to communicate your boundaries in a calm and clear way. so that the conversation can remain respectful and productive, because really that's what you want. You want a productive conversation. It doesn't have to be all happy, happy, joy, joy. There may be some tears. There may be a little frustration and some deep breaths, but get through it. Be respectful, be productive, and it'll work. And if this is not met with mutual respect or that kind of same vibe, it's perfectly okay to remove yourself from the situation. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have enough respect and value yourself to just remove yourself from the situation if it's not being met with respect. And then there's also, the importance of acknowledging what your role is in enforcing your boundaries. What part do you play? Because it's unfair to expect someone else, to respect your boundaries if you haven't even made them clear in the first place. So try to take time to reflect on whether you have been clear about your boundaries as well. And then make sure and clear that up. If you feel like there's any sort of question at all, just reiterate it and clear up the water. Because your boundaries are your responsibility. And you are the only person who can truly protect your boundaries. And it's your responsibility to communicate them clearly. So this means being honest with yourself and honest with others about what you will and what you will not tolerate. And being prepared to speak up for yourself when those boundaries are crossed. Which leads me to the next portion of this, which is having the courage to love yourself even when we risk disappointing others. This can be very challenging for some people to prioritize ourselves, especially when we worry about the reactions of other people. But it's super important to remember that our happiness, health, and well-being should be a priority. If we can't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anybody else. So it takes courage to put ourselves first. And one of the most common things that I hear, and I also experienced myself, is the feeling of guilt or that feeling of selfishness, for setting boundaries. And it's important to recognize, acknowledge that feeling, acknowledge your feelings, but acknowledge them without judgment. Don't judge yourself, be easy on yourself. Because it's important to recognize that setting boundaries is not selfish. This is a form of self-care. It's the building blocks of who you are and protecting yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. And many of us have grown up with the idea that putting others first is the right thing to do. But it can be really detrimental to our mental health and our self-esteem if we're constantly prioritizing others over ourselves. And so it's important to recognize that we are not responsible for the happiness of others. And we cannot control their reactions when we're trying to help ourselves. So it's natural to want to please those around us. It's a natural part of life. Especially if you're a loving, caring, kind, giving person. I don't want you to change who you are. You just need to protect yourself. So we must learn how to love, prioritize, and protect ourselves. And that starts with boundaries. So learning to love ourselves and setting boundaries with others, like saying no when we need to and taking time for self-care, prioritizing that. It's not always easy, but it's important. And remember that you are worthy of love and respect from the inside out. That includes from yourself as well. And by loving ourselves, we also are setting an example for those around us to prioritize their own health and well-being. It's about finding a balance between caring for ourselves and caring for others. And it takes practice and patience and persistency, But with time, you can learn to prioritize yourself without feeling guilty or selfish. So how can you tell when a boundary is being crossed? That's another thing that comes up frequently. You can often, you can feel when something's off. Your intuition will give you signals. It just feels wrong or off or something's not right. This intuition stems from the connection between your mind, body, and your emotions. And when a boundary is crossed, you'll receive signals that will alert you that something isn't right, and it can come from, an intuitive awareness, like where, that, something is just off. You can't really pinpoint it, and that's your higher self signaling you to protect yourself. So listen when you have that feeling. Just listen to yourself. There could also be physical signs. Maybe you feel, a knot in your stomach or tightness in your chest, or your heart races. You can also feel drained or tired. That's also a sign sometimes that someone could be pushing your boundaries or crossing a boundary, because your body uses extra energy to handle that emotional stress, which, emotional signs also, when you suddenly feel like super emotional, maybe you feel like irritated or frustrated, and that could be your emotions telling you that a boundary is being crossed or pushed in some way. So anxiety, unease, feelings of anger or resentment, these are, often arise when boundaries are being ignored. It's the signals that yourself is sending you, and that it's saying, hey, you need to address this issue. So let's start with an example scenario when boundaries were crossed. We had a family gathering. You faced some, real invasive questions about your personal life that made you really uncomfortable. So these moments, the teachable moments, are valuable because we can recognize when our boundaries when they're being crossed, and understanding the importance of protecting them. So when you find yourself in situations where you feel that your boundaries are being crossed or violated in any way, it's important to ask yourself some key questions to, dig deep and get a better understanding, to establish your boundaries. Or maybe you need to adjust boundaries that are already set. So here's some questions that you might consider. What made me uncomfortable in this situation? So when you're reflecting, what made me uncomfortable in this situation? Because pinpointing the exact words or actions that, triggered that discomfort can help you identify what you need to protect. Next is, why did I feel compelled to answer or engage? This is tricky because understanding why you reacted the way that you did can reveal, pressures and belief systems that you may need to address, basically. Then, what would have made me feel more comfortable? Then you want to imagine an ideal response or in this scenario. And that way it can guide you in setting a clear boundary for the future. How do I typically react when my boundaries are crossed? This is a great one. Analyzing your usual reaction can help you identify your own patterns and decide if you need to adjust, or modify your own behavior, which is very important. And what are the consequences of not setting this boundary? Consider the potential emotional or mental toll that can reinforce the importance of establishing boundaries. How can I communicate my boundaries effectively? This is where you would think about specific phrases and strategies that can assert your boundaries without escalating the situation, causing a confrontation or, attacking someone. And who respects my boundaries and why? That one might be a long list. I hope it's a long list for you. I hope there's people in your life that do respect your boundaries. But reflect on these positive interactions. It can provide insights into what works and what strengthens your resolve. So that's a good one to focus on. Now we're going to focus on something that is a little bit more complicated. These are Spotting the red flags is what I called it. And have you ever been in a situation where something just feels off? Can't quite put your finger on it. That is your gut, like I said earlier, telling you something's going on. These are signals, they're flags, you can say. So let's cover some of the red flags. And these are ones that you need to be aware of and, how they might feel to you. So constantly ignoring or dismissing your feelings and opinions. This can make you feel invisible, really, and undervalued. And it can leave this lingering sense of frustration and sadness. So that's definitely a red flag. Frequently invading your personal space without permission. This may trigger feelings of anxiety and discomfort, even past trauma. And if, as if like your boundaries are being relentlessly violated. So that's another red flag. Pressuring you to share personal information you're not comfortable sharing. That is also a red flag. So if you've made it clear that you're not comfortable sharing something and somebody continues to pressure you, this can create this, unease and this like vulnerability as if your privacy is being stripped away from you, everything about that. So keep that in mind. Disregarding your no, I'm saying in air quotes, or pushing you to change your mind. It's the same thing as before. It's that pressure. Once you've said something, and this can feel like a constant battle against disrespect, really, because it leaves you kind of feeling, some people feeling a little powerless and disrespected, and it's an energy zapper. Making decisions for you without your consent. This might cause feelings of helplessness, even anger, because your independence is being undermined. Attempting to control or manipulate your actions or choices. This can feel like you're trapped, like in this deceit, leading to confusion and really a complete loss of self. Because when this other person is trying to control or manipulate your actions or choices, they're stepping all over you. So that's definitely a red flag. And then here we come to the last one. Gaslighting, or making you doubt your own perceptions and experiences. This is a tricky one, and it's very common, and it can cause you to feel kind of lost, and unsure of yourself, and it can lead to emotional turmoil, really, and self-doubt, and you definitely don't want that. So pay attention to those red flags. And, be kind to yourself, even if you mess up and you're just like, oh, I should have known that, just be good to yourself. Practice that good self-talk, that healthy self-talk. So now let's talk about some steps to take when boundaries are continued to be ignored. When they continue to ignore your boundaries, they just don't give two cares. So first is if you can remain calm and assertive. That's super important, because if someone continues to ignore your boundaries and you stay calm and you reiterate your boundaries clearly and assertively using the I statements that I talked about earlier, you can express how their behavior affects you. And so you can say I feel uncomfortable when whatever this topic is brought up because I value my privacy, and evaluate the situation. Assess why the person might be pushing your boundaries. Are they unaware, or are they intentionally disregarding your needs? Understanding their motivations can help guide your response to the situation. And set consequences. If the boundary continues to be ignored, it might be necessary for you to establish consequences. Clearly communicate, what actions you're going to take if this boundary is not respected. For example, if the conversation continues in this direction, I will need to step away. Boom, problem solved. And then limit the interaction. If possible, limit your interactions with people who consistently ignore your boundaries, because protecting yourself is a priority. And sometimes distancing yourself from boundary pushers or boundary violators is necessary, especially if they're continuing to, gaslight you and make you feel bad about yourself. And seek support. Turn to your friends and family and people, that you trust. The support can be very helpful and can provide, perspective and encouragement and strategies for reinforcing your boundaries. And last, but certainly not least, is reflect and adjust. After the encounter, take time to reflect on what happened. Consider whether your boundary needs to be adjusted or communicated differently in the future, and that reflection will help you make that adjustment. Okay, so let's continue on with the example scenario I used earlier. So now you're at that same gathering. You're at a gathering again. Okay. And when the conversation veered toward personal questions again, this time you calmly express your discomfort. You politely say, "I'd rather not discuss this topic right now." This is a clear statement. It helps you establish a boundary immediately. And it also allows you to enjoy the rest of the gathering without feeling pressured. Nice and simple. I'd rather not discuss this topic right now. If they continue to push despite your expressed discomfort, you can say something like, I've mentioned that I'm not comfortable sharing personal details. If this continues, or if you continue to push, I'm going to leave the conversation. Boom. Simple. You can use your own language, just be polite. And if they persist, just follow through with what you said you were going to do. Follow through with your consequence. Get up and leave. That's it. Nothing else. That's a period behind that. Get up and leave, period. And sometimes, despite how many times you clearly communicate, people can continue to be pushy and to push against and ignore and violate your boundaries. And this can be super frustrating and very challenging if you're not sure how to navigate that. Just remember that it's important to handle it with patience. Handle yourself with patience. And remind yourself that setting boundaries is about protecting you, not controlling others, because you have the right to decide what is acceptable for you. And it's natural to feel frustrated or upset when they're ignored. Acknowledging these feelings and practicing self-compassion as you navigate these difficult interactions will be very healthy for you. And as you learn and grow, your boundaries will also need to evolve and grow. So be open to adjusting them as necessary, to better suit your evolving needs and your circumstances. And here's some simple steps to set healthy boundaries. Just kind of like a little 5-step. Know your limits. Understand what makes you comfortable and what doesn't. And be clear about your personal needs and values. 2, communicate clearly. Let others know your boundaries in a calm, clear manner. I can't say that enough. For example, you might say, "I need some quiet time now," or "I prefer not to discuss that topic." Whatever it is, put a period behind it, Number 3 is, be consistent. Stick with your boundaries consistently. This helps others to respect your needs and shows that you're serious about them. And number 4 is practice self-care. Setting boundaries is that form of self-love and self-care. It's about taking care of you so that you can be the best version of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. And number 5 is reflect and adjust. So as you grow and you change and evolve, your boundaries might need to adjust as well. So reflect on what's working, what's not working, and making changes as needed. That's why journaling is so important, because you can go back and you can see your growth, and you can really, track your patterns as well and make those adjustments. Because, the idea is that we want that empowerment, to empower us to make choices that really align with our core values and our desires. giving us, that sense of independence and self-respect and self-love. And when we set boundaries, we communicate to ourselves and others that our body, our time, our energy, and our emotions are valuable. And so this deepens our relationship with ourselves, and it improves our interactions and our relationships with others. So I want you to think about what you need to feel good in your relationships. Reflect on past experience, relationships where you felt uneasy or stressed. What was it about the situation that made you feel that way? Maybe come up with one boundary that you would like to set to avoid feeling this way in the future. And consider how setting this boundary can lead to a healthier relationship. Jot down a few positive outcomes that you could foresee, and that will help bring that positive spin to it as well. And so when you're ready, and you choose that one boundary that you're ready to implement, write down how you would explain it to someone as well and practice it. Be sure to keep it clear, kind, and firm. And practice saying this to, anyone. You could practice to your cat, your dog, your friend, in front of a mirror. Just get comfortable with your own message, so that you can feel confident in real time when you're ready to communicate it. That's what's important, because real time, real life is what's the most important. I can give you all the information in the world, all the tips I could possibly write, but it really comes down to you and your language. So you want to create, it's important to remind yourself that this isn't about pushing other people away. It isn't about building walls. It's about protecting yourself. It's about creating a space in which you can grow and thrive and feel safe. And once you have a clear understanding of your boundaries, it's time to really put them into action. So you can't do that. You can't think all these things and write all these journal entries and this and that if you're not taking action. So then you take action. You take that one step further. And so you've practiced, and this is about moving from thought to practice, where you begin to actively implement the boundaries and the changes that you want to see in your life. So remember, small, consistent actions can lead to big transformations over time. So celebrate all of your wins, even if it's just a small one. So start, in fact, I encourage you to start small, start small, set achievable goals, that are clear, and create a plan, and then practice. Everything takes practice. And so holding yourself accountable is super important for maintaining any sort of momentum of change. It involves taking responsibility for your actions and staying committed to your own personal growth. This is your journey, not anyone else's. So accountability is really important. And as you begin to take action and to hold yourself accountable, you'll likely start noticing this positive shift in your relationships and your health, actually. So as you embrace this process as, an ongoing journey, because it's constant, it's something you're going to have to do the rest of your life, and maintaining your boundaries if you want to live and have healthy relationships with yourself as well, and just know that you're stepping toward a healthier, more empowered, authentic you. And let's face it, setting boundaries is not exactly a walk in the park. Who hasn't, felt the desperate urge to run away when they had to make that awkward call or, have that dreaded face-to-face talk? It's legit. It's real, Or maybe you've taken the sneaky route and quietly put your boundaries in place without even letting anybody know. It's not the most thrilling task on our to-do list. But now that you have some tools to help you set healthy boundaries and maintain them and communicate them in a healthy way, you can build stronger, healthier relationships in your life. And if you want to continue your journey, I encourage you to order a copy of Healthy Boundaries, Identifying and Setting Personal Boundaries. It's a workbook journal, and you can find it on Amazon under the author name Harvest Prosperity, or you can find it under the self-help section at harvestprosperity.com. My time is just about up, but before I go, I'd like to share a quote with you from the workbook. Every step you take toward becoming healthier from the inside out raises your vibration, creating a beautiful ripple effect that positively affects those around you. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Harvest Prosperity Podcast. I hope it inspires you to set healthy boundaries that honor your authentic self and help build beautiful, healthy relationships in your life. If you're interested in exploring self-help services and resources, or if you would like to book a coaching or therapy services, please feel free to contact me directly at harvestprosperity.com. Don't forget to hit subscribe to get notified when another episode drops. Follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Harvest Prosperity. Until next time, continue nurturing those beautiful seeds of greatness within you.